Anything else you want to share with us before we get started with the program?
No, I think that's it, Dave, and I'm looking forward to the update. You've given us periodic chats about how you view this currency exchange, and so each time you do, you update us, bringing in your recent things that you've learned or thought about. So that's always a nice thing to share.
Well, tonight, folks, what I want to do is just a complete overall big picture about this whole currency exchange. Why is it happening? What's its purpose? Where's this money coming from? And why is this happening to us now? It's been a while since I've kind of shared that, but what I want to talk about is, and this is what I share within the workshops, what we're seeing is that as humanity, we go through cycles of history. Now, David Wilcock had written a very, very good book about that, how history cycles. And we have different eras of time of the cycles of history that we go through. And we're ending up finishing a major historical cycle and moving into a new one. And that major or larger cycle is the 26,000 year cycle. And we're moving out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. Now, there's smaller cycles that go with that. But what we're seeing is that as humanity, as a human race, we're basically beginning to wake up, is what we're doing. We're going through an increase in our awareness and a rise in our consciousness. And there's various things that are creating that and allowing that to happen. But if you think that we haven't gone through a major change, go back about 140 to 160 years and look at the changes in the material world as far as in the industrial age and the issues that have come with us and communication, and now moving into the high-tech age and the communication age, and to where something as little as this as a cell phone and you're in touch with the whole world. You go back to 1850, 1860, we didn't have, locomotives and trains were just starting to come into existence. And prior to that, your only communication was word of mouth, or how fast can your horse go, or how fast can the ship go. And that was it. And it was that way for thousands of years. And then all of a sudden we just had this huge spike in learning and understanding and changing and awareness. But that was in the physical world. But what we're starting to do now, we're starting to take the second step of this major change, and we're moving into understanding what is called the intuitive world, the non-physical world. And that again comes back to understanding the power of our thoughts, that non-physical aspect about how that intuitive part of our lives, our thoughts, ends up creating all of the experiences that we have, everything that we go on. Because underneath all this, with these memes that come out of our thoughts, we are creators. And we create this world. So we're going through this massive change. And what's happened with humanity in this, in fact, I'm reading a book right now by Barbara Marciniak, and this was a book that was actually done in the mid-90s, and she channels this book from the Palladians. And they talk about humanity is ready to go through its next major step of awareness and waking up and rise of consciousness. And we're going to see massive shifts and changes. Now, what we've had for thousands of years is the human race has basically been in various forms of slavery to these master controllers. Whether it was kings, monarchs, dictators, whatever it may be, they always ran and ruled the world, and the rest of humanity was in different forms of slavery to them. And life for the human race for thousands of years was basically about survival. Can I get enough food to eat? Can I get enough shelter so that if I'm in a colder climate, I'm not going to die from being cold or freezing? And can I get enough protection of myself to defend myself from the wild animals just on a survival basis? Or what about the war with warring countries or villages warring against each other? Can I protect myself from someone else coming and taking control of me and warring and killing me? That was the issue of humanity, where the default thought system was always first and foremost about survival, which is fear-driven. And that is where humanity lived for thousands and thousands of years. And then we started going through our industrial and our technological changes. And in the last 25 years, with the advent of the internet, we've gone through massive changes of understanding and are able to wake up. But here's where we are still today. We still live in a world that over half the world's population, about 4 billion people, still live on less than $10 a day. Folks, that's called survival. That's barely survival when you live on that kind of money in some of the world. The rest of us that are in the developed countries, our lifestyle is much better. Yes, we've got cars and TV and radio and cell phones and food, and we've got all this kind of stuff. We've got the modern society standards, but we're still slaves to our jobs. Because the average person gets up in the morning, it takes an hour or two to get ready to go to work, and if you got kids at home, you got to get them ready to go to school. And then between your commuting time and work time and lunch time, you're gone 9 to 10 hours, and you come home, time to cook dinner, time to get the family, settled, get the kids in bed, and then if you're lucky, you have maybe 1 to 2 hours to yourself. And then it's time to go to bed and get up the next day and start all over again. And we do that for 5 days, and then the weekend rolls around and we're playing catch up for what we didn't get done during the week, or we're doing stuff with the family. So there's very, very little time to break out of this cycle of survival, whether it's working jobs and being paid very well, or living on less than $10 a day. We still live in these forms of financial slavery. So here we are today, and all the stuff that I've been reading coming from a number of different sources, and predominantly from the really good, what I call the non-physical ones, from the Palladians, who are very highly a conscious group, and then from Jesus, the channeling of the Jesus books that I told you about, that I've been reading. They talk about the human race is ready to take a step forward in the rising of its consciousness and its awareness and in its growth process. Because the program I talked about two programs back is that as a human race, we're always in this place where our soul wants to expand. The soul wants to grow. It wants to expand. It wants to learn. It wants to have experiences of awareness. For the next step, that means we need to break out of the financial slavery that we've been in for thousands of years. And this is where we are. And that's why we're on this verge of this edge of this currency exchange and this money coming forward. I started in this process about 5 years ago. And I remembered it was, it was about 7 years ago I was introduced to the dinar. And I remember the lady introducing it to me, and I said, well, that's nice to hear, but where's Iraq coming up with these billions of dollars to pay for all this stuff? And she started talking to me about what was called, the oil credit contracts that were going on between Iraq and the United States and China. And I thought, well, okay, that makes sense. There's a possibility there. So I just started reading and doing research. And I started seeing about all the stuff that was going on. And they were talking about the dinar was going to be at 3.25. And then it started in the summer of 2013. It started going through its crazy changes. And the people that were reporting it started at 3.25, and within 2 to 3 months they had it all the way up to $30 a dinar. And I said, this is absolutely crazy. This is crazy. Well, prior to that, I had already been doing an internet radio program with another lady. And we kind of went our separate ways. And in the April of 2013, I quit doing the program. Well, then I moved into September of 2013. And I had maybe around 30 friends now that I was involved with this whole Iraqi dinar exchange stuff. And there was an article that came out about some of the things that the banks were going to do. And I thought, this is absolutely crazy. Because remember, folks, I had a practical background and experience where I did work in the banking industry for about 2.5 years. So I knew how banks operated. I knew that. I said, banks don't do this stuff. This is absolutely crazy. And so when I saw my friends just going goo goo and gaga over this article, and I said, this is stupid. And I felt really inspired to sit down and write an article. Write a letter to them. And when I sat down to write it, it was on a Sunday morning, and it was one of those moments where the waves of inspiration just came in. And the next thing you know, I ended up writing about a 12-page article. I only sent it to my 30 friends. And still to today, I don't know who, but somebody sent it to Dinar Recaps. And in there I had my name and my email. And the next thing that I know, I received over 1,000 emails in 10 days commenting about what I had written. Now, when that happened, it was just 2 weeks prior to that, I was inspired again by the Holy Spirit to restart my radio program, and I was calling it the Sedona Connection. So I start my radio program. I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about. A week and a half later, I get these 1,000 emails come in 10 days, and I knew right then, this is what I'm supposed to talk about. And that's what got me started in this whole currency exchange scenario. Well, I started learning, watching, understanding, talking with people. I ended up, going on with a lady that was in Texas on her radio program. Many of you still remember her. That was Charla. Her and I dated for about a year and a half. And that just started opening doors when I was on her program and doing my program. And I did my very first workshop in March of 2014 in Dallas, Fort Worth, and I had about 180 people show up. And that's when I realized I need to continue this. So that's when I just started doing the workshops. And those have always been what's been extremely good. But what I've learned, and this what I learned from my years that I was in the legislature, it's if something seems unrealistic or just doesn't quite seem to fit or it's unusual, always, always, always follow the money. Follow the money. So I started asking questions and I started doing research. And I started following the money, and I says, how realistic is this? Where's this money going to come from? But I had heard and knew about these dragon families. And I was already saying that the only place that I'm aware of that this kind of money could come from are these dragon families, these ancient families that are based in Asia. And so, remember, I started the radio programs. I was doing the workshops in March, and then by July of 2014, I got a contact from a dragon family representative. Now, I spent the next year and a half working with this representative, and he started informing me about all the history of the dragon families. I took 3 trips to Hong Kong and became acquainted with them, and that's when I found out these families are for real. They really, truly have this huge, large sums of money. Now, concerning the people that involved me, what I found out is the man that called himself the Red Dragon was really just a very low pecking order dragon family member. And I'm telling you what is my impression. My impression was he was wanting to use me in the publicity from my program to kind of help him get up the pecking order. But at the end of the day, I felt they had no authority to make any decisions whatsoever. But I learned a lot about the history of the families. I learned a lot about the reality of this gold. And I've shared this before, that they showed me pictures that some have been public and some have not. But they said that they had the single largest gold storage facility in Hong Kong. Now, on one of my last trips there, I was ready. I was 2 days away from going into this gold storage facility with one of the Dragon family members, and he ended up having an assassination attempt on his life. I thought, whoa, that's interesting. And I think he and I, from a period there over the next 3 or 4 months, we just kind of faded away. And he's a good man. He has great intentions, but he wasn't really feeding and kind of helping of where I wanted, and because I was looking for who had the authority for all this money. So that I always felt that's where the money was coming from, because I said, show me the money. There's a lot of people still on all these, the dinar recaps and the other dinar programs. They talk about, the exchange and the 800 numbers, but they never, never, never tell you who's paying for it. Who's got the scores of trillions of dollars to pay for what they talk about? And I can say it, dragon families aren't paying for that. They're not paying for that. Well, as I continued through this process, because I was public, I had more and more people contacting me. And that's when I began to realize there's multiple sources of this funding that is out there. I'd come across what I've told you is the Texas Processing Office. And I've done my homework. I know an individual that is personal friends with the man who runs that program, runs that process. She's explained to me the whole background, the history of why that office, how it came into existence, why he was chosen to run this, the contracts that they have, the multiple countries of contracts that are all involved in this, and how they acquired their money from 25 years of the off-market trading platforms. And my source, my broker, has said that he has seen the bank account. It's in a very large bank in Hong Kong where all the money is there, and everything is ready to go. They're just waiting for the decision makers to make the decision. Now that's the background. So, but really, why is this happening? Because it's time for humanity in our evolutionary process of growth and consciousness awareness. It's time for us to transition. It's time for us to grow. It's time for us to shift. It's time for us to be released from our thousands of years of financial slavery. And this currency exchange that we're involved with is only the first step of many steps that are going to go on for a couple of decades. We're basically having the opportunity to be the pioneers. And the reason is because there needs to be a shift and a change. Now, there's different stories about how people explain this. And I'm going to share with you what is my perspective on this. We live in a world where the money has been run and controlled by those that we would call the cabal. They have dominated what was called the central banking system. And here in the United States, our central bank is the Federal Reserve. And by dominating and controlling these central banks, they control the ebb and flow of the world's money supply. Excuse me, my nose itches. Okay. And so they dominate and control the world's money supply. Well, our funds being released to us through the currency exchange doesn't necessarily kill them or put them out of business. It's what I call it neuters them. It neuters their power. Because as more money is released through us, that's money that they don't have the control over. Now, let me share with you, for those of you that are already in me and you've already put currencies in, I've shared that I'm still going to have you fill out some new paperwork that we're going to have to do, and I have already done this. And in that is a contract that you're going to agree that the funding sources have the right to basically have access to your bank account to see how you're spending the money. And if you don't like that, well, fine, go find another broker that will take your currencies. There's a reason why they're doing this. What I've shared in the workshops is the benevolent people who have had these large sums of money, they understand that for us as humanity to grow and to become to a world of peace, we need to be able to bring economies around the world on par with each other. Right now, we still live in a world where the United States is the dominant economy, but yet these G7 countries are the very powerful ones, and they control the rest of the world, and the rest of the world lives in what is called secondary standards to them. Now there's the BRICS countries that are rising up and starting to change as well. But we're at this time in this era where the whole world is ripe for a shift and change. Well, they wanted to start doing this with the Bretton Woods Agreement back right around the era of World War II. And what they learned is that they couldn't release these trillions of dollars because the cabal would still control it. The second effort, what was called the Green Hilton Memorial Agreement between President Sukarno of Indonesia and President Kennedy. President Sukarno was a Dragon family member, and he had, what I was told, it was about $5 or $6 trillion in 1962 dollars to release all this money. And that got stopped. And we understand what happened to Kennedy. He was assassinated. Sukarno was taken over by a military coup in his own country, so that didn't work. These benevolent funders, Dragon families and others, understood that they needed to wait until we were in a position where these funds could be released and it wouldn't empower these cabal controllers. Because see, if let's say they were to release $5 trillion, well, you put that out into the global economy and it runs through the central banking systems, guess what? It all funnels still right back to the controllers. So now all of a sudden they have more money and they're more power and more control. We needed to come to a point where the banking system was safe, and that these funds could be released and it wouldn't funnel into their hands of their power and control. And we are there now. We've heard about this new quantum financial system that's a part of it. And we're hearing about the new banking system that's coming in, what's replacing the SWIFT system of how money is moved on the money wires around the world. And the reason that they want to be able to follow your money is to make sure that the money doesn't flow through you and get into the hands of criminal hands. The intent is to make sure these funds do their job of stimulating the global economy around the world, and it doesn't make these powerful, controlling elite cabal more powerful. That's the purpose. And not only do we as individuals receive one, there's also trillions of money that's going to be released for humanitarian aid causes around the world. Now, that's the background of why we're here. And this is not just a one-shot deal, folks. This is going to go on for, as I said, for probably a couple decades. But this is the very start of it. Now, my sources, my broker sources say, yes, not only are we receiving the money for the bonds and the currencies, but there's also trillions of dollars that are going to be released for humanitarian aid causes. Now, they have always communicated with me that we're ready. There are 4 decision makers, and these 4 decision makers are the ones that will make the decision of the when. None of us know when. They're not leaking anything out. They're not telling anybody whatsoever when that's going to happen. But myself and others, now this is just speculation on my and others' part as we talk about this, we really believe one of the positive things of the COVID virus is what it's done to the global economy. It's devastated the global economy, but it's set up a perfect scenario for these funds to be released for humanitarian aid issues around the world, and the cabal doesn't get to touch it. And it puts this money into work. And that's the intention of putting this money into work. So we don't know. There's speculations say it may happen shortly before the election. I don't know. I've heard the stories. I get, again, being in my position because I'm public, I get so many stories. And I always say, follow the money. I had just an email just the other day. It says, well, what do you know about the dinar? And I had to email a guy back and it says, you haven't been listening to my program, obviously, because I've been saying for 4 years, dinar is dead. There's no one buying your dinar. There's nobody buying dinar anymore, okay? At some point in time, there has to be somebody that physically has trillions of dollars to pay for this currency at this extremely high rate. Somebody's got to do it. And so who has this money? Where is it coming from? And how's that money going to get from their bank accounts into your bank account so you can spend it? That's why I tell folks, whatever exchange, if you're going to be with someone else, follow the money. Follow the money. Find out who's your broker, where are they getting the money, how did they obtain it, and how are they going to pay you? Because if you can't answer those questions, it's a very high probability you're being sucked in to false trap setup. Now, this false trap setup, what I'm saying is, what's going to happen is it's designed to keep people focused on that so they don't find the real stuff where the real money is. There's very, very few true sources that have access to this money and these currencies and how they're going to be exchanged. U.S. Treasury controls this, and Treasury is only going to allow so much money to be released. Now, for a long time, we didn't know if they were going to pay all at once, if we were going to have to pay taxes. We still haven't had all those questions answered. But here's what myself and others are picking up. There's a very high probability that all the money isn't going to come out at the same time. The first installment is probably going to be about 20%. And there's a very high probability the rest will be 20% per year for about 5 years. Folks, don't put that, don't etch it into stone. I don't know that. I'm only telling you that's what I'm hearing. I can't get any guarantee on it. When I try to go to my sources, they'll say, we're not talking. Nobody's talking to us. We don't know, because they don't want rumors floating around out there that get crazy and all these different stories start taking place. So that's what I know. And this is what's happening. And I can understand why these funds are there. I've done everything that I can within my ability to know that the money is there where the bank is. The people that I work with and I trust, I've been with them now for almost 3 or 4 years. They always come back with the same story. They've seen the bank accounts. And I have multiple people that tell me that, not just my broker. I have another source that tells me that as well. And it's designed because these, what I call these benevolent families, dragon families and others, have understood that it's time for humanity. Now, the story around the gold, the dragon families have, this gold has been there, and they've had, my understanding is they've had this for thousands of years. And the majority of them has said that this isn't our gold. This gold belongs to humanity. We are custodians and caretakers of it to release it at the right appropriate time. And this is the time. This is the age and the era that we're in. And this is what belongs to humanity, and it will be released back to humanity to be spread out. Yes, there are still physical, logistical people and banks and contracts that go into all of this stuff, so don't think it's just going to be boom, No, you got to follow through the process, and you have to want to be a part of it. But that's how it's been explained to me. And that's why I've stayed with this, because if I felt that there wasn't any reliability in this, I would walk away. I'd walk away in a heartbeat. I don't want to be involved in something that's just, a happy fancy that has no practical logistical aspect that it's ever going to happen. I do my work. I say, follow the money. Show me the bank accounts. Show me the contracts. Show me that it's there. Where did they get this money? How did they get this? What is its purpose? Show me the bigger picture of why all this is happening. And that's what I wanted to explain to you tonight, to help you understand that. So I think with that, folks, also just to know that, again, the workshops are back on. I go into more questions. I'm able to share a lot more at the workshops, and I'm able to more practically answer questions there, because it's a private and quiet setting is what the workshops are. So on a side note, for those of you that are already have been registering for the Dallas-Fort Worth, I've had some problems with my PayPal account, so I've had to basically shut that down, and we're not going to use PayPal. I'm going to get another couple of days. I'm going to use basically another payment format. It is, but plenty of room still at the Dallas workshop on September 12th. 2 weeks after that, we're going to be in Chicago, and I'm in the process where I'll be scheduling some more, and it'd be nice being back doing the workshops because, folks, it will have been 7 months, and I love the workshops because that's where we get to come together. We get to talk, we get to intermingle, we become acquainted with each other, we develop contacts and relationships that are there. We learn from each other, and that's what's great about having one full day together for all of us. And for those of you that if our finances are tight, remember, I always offer the scholarship rate, because if you want to be there, I want you to be there. But I do need to cover all my expenses, okay? Well, I think that's all that I want to share tonight. Blanca, why don't you come back on with us and kind of share with us some of your thoughts?
Well, it's it's very interesting. You did start from the very beginning of this adventure for yourself, and during all this time, you've had all kinds of people join you, listen to you, some challenging you. You've had some criticism. You've had some laws. So you've been through a lot. And I also thought the people who have always believed you and listened to you and understood what you were sharing, they've been with you for a long time too. So this is something that many people have been nurturing. Again, on the topic of the frequency of your thoughts and what you're inviting into your life, there are people who have been with you for quite a while and are actually energizing the manifestation of this particular thing as well. So that kind of occurred to me as you were going through the history. I started thinking of all the different people who are also involved in this with you.
Well, when you step into an endeavor like this and you're challenging the existing power structure, you're going to have people who are going to come against you. You're going to have people that are going to try to shut you down. You're going to have people that are going to try to disrupt what you're doing. That I just like, it's just par for the course. That's what happens in all this. And I think myself and others underneath this, we truly understand that this is what is called a divine assignment. As we keep ourselves in honesty and integrity, that's like there's this protective bubble that covers us and keeps us safe regardless of what's going on. It's been probably about 4 years ago, but I remembered I was at this one workshop in Sedona, and I had a lady in the audience, and she's one of these ladies that she just has that gift where she can see non-physical entities, angels and others. And she came up to me and she says, Dave, you've got these two Palladian masters that are 8 feet tall standing right beside you, and they are there to protect you and keep you safe. They follow you everywhere they go. She described to me what they looked like, what they were wearing, the helmets they had on, the whole works. And she just said they always follow you around. They're just there protecting you. It's like they put this energy shield around you, is what that they do. And I thought, all right, whatever. I mean, that was kind of a nice experience to hear. But yeah.
That's right. That's another way to say, you have friends in high places.
I just know that I always consistently hear, as long as I stay and operate within the window of integrity, I'm fine and I'm safe. I step outside that bubble, I'm on my own. So, yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. And that's true for many of us. Again, as we're becoming more adept at the frequency of our thoughts and more conscious of the awareness, these are the sort of things, let's put it this way, these are the sort of benefits you start experiencing. You have high frequency thoughts, you start attracting high frequency assistance or protection, as you say, or support or wisdom. So these are things that are at a high frequency, and so that's kind of like a payoff, in addition to helping with this currency exchange. Yes, it's nice. It's going to be great for us to have the money, for us to fund our projects. But this is really something that we're bringing forth that's very, it's going to break the matrix. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No, that's true. So, yep. Yeah. Well, if we want to, we can go into some callers, people who would like to either...
Sounds good.
You want to call in and make a comment or ask some questions. That number is 515-605-9356. Once again, the number is 515-605-9356. And then press 1 on your touch-tone phone, and then that lets you know that you would like to, come in and be a part of the program tonight. So, Blanca, I'm going to go ahead and just go right straight to this first person. And we do have one person that is here, and that person is from area code 203. So it's coming up. Let's see, area code 203,
Hi,
you're
Dave.
on the air?
Yes.
Sure.
Hi, Dave. This is Peter.
Uh-huh.
How are you?
Good.
Oh, great. Good. I'm hearing some different things. You have to have projects lined up, and there's like a list of 15 prime ones where they will exchange at a higher rate. If you don't propose a humanitarian project in that list that's associated to that list, they're going to give you a lower rate. I just wondering if you could confirm any.
I've heard that, and to me it's just another story because they can never tell you where they're getting the money and who's paying for it. Here's what I know. All of the sources that have the money, they require you to be with them up front. You're going to have to fill out all this paperwork. You're going to have to sign these contracts. And those people that talk about the 800 numbers and the processing centers, none of them do that. And none of them ever talk about where their money's coming from. And I've been challenging them that for 5 years. So what you're telling me is just another one of those stories that can never tell you where their money's coming from to do what they're saying. So that's all I can say. Follow the money.
What you're saying, what you're saying right now is when they're talking about these 800 numbers, some of these other gurus or groups are talking about. You don't believe there's going to be 800 numbers coming out, and they're talking about this week or next week. It would for September 15th.
They've been saying this week or next week for 4 years. I follow them. I watch them all the time. They've basically been saying they never take responsibility for being wrong in what they say. Never. They hardly ever address that. They've been saying the same thing next week for 4 years. What does that tell you? Put on your common sense thinking cap. And they never tell you where the money's coming from and who's got it and how they're going to get paid. Never. Who's got the scores of trillions of dollars to pay for what they talk about? And that's what I say. Follow the money.
Very interesting point.
Yeah, follow the money. Those are just
Will
stories.
it be this year, though?
What's that?
Will something be happening with the currencies exchanges this year?
I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I do have a comment about that. I'm in a special group. It's very explicit, very confidential. They will not tell you when it happens. But they did say, I got from one of the, trustees in the group that did confirm just this past week that something will happen probably within 30 days or something very, very soon. So something, and they wouldn't be doing something, I don't think, if something wasn't going on. Something is about to happen. And they're not going to tell us until the moment it happens because they don't want anybody interfering. It's very confidential. And the security is of utmost importance. That's what the problem is.
And I've heard various sources like that as well. And again, I would come back and said, who's your broker? Where are they getting their money? How did they get it? And how do you know they're going to pay you? Ask them that.
I wouldn't talk about it on this call.
No, you don't need to say it publicly on the program.
More hints about it.
But I just, you see, I've been around this now for, 7 years now. I've heard so many stories of people that have thought that everything they've done was so legitimate and so good. And that's why I come back and says, is your broker authorized by U.S. Treasury? If not, then the odds are basically 8 out of 10. You're not getting paid. Because Treasury controls how much money is going to be released into the country and the general economy. And they're not just going to allow scores of trillions of dollars to be thrown out there. If you don't have a contract, if you're not approved by Treasury, you're not getting paid. That's my opinion. That's my statement. That's the position that I take. And that's what I've been told from my sources.
Is the Zimbabwe current bonds, do you think they will redeem those?
There are no such thing as Zimbabwe bonds. Those are just stories. If they were bonds, they would be out there on the international bond market and you could be able to do your research and you see them. There is a Zimbabwe currency and there are a few buyers that are buying it, but I don't know any other sources that are buying it. There's a probability, but here's what I would say. Don't buy anything until you know you got a buyer. Don't go spending money on any of this until you know you got a legitimate buyer. Make sure you got a buyer. Because if you don't have a buyer, especially on the Zim, you're losing money. The Zimbabwe and the dinar are currencies that are not exchanged on the open foreign exchange market, which means you can't take them into a bank and get your money back if it's not for real. You lose. Unless you can find some other person who's going to buy it from you. What's that?
Yeah, the Vietnam dong, you can exchange it at one of those currency places.
And that's why that's the only one that I am operating in right now, and that's the one that I pay the most attention to, because if all of this falls apart, you can get your money back. You can take the dong into the bank and get your money back because it's a tradable currency.
Yeah.
You see?
I see.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does. If somebody's opening up a bank, well, I really don't want to ask you this question on the air, but there's another question I could ask you. I will email you that question and see what you might have to comment about it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
You've been
Thanks.
very helpful.
Okay. Have a good evening. Okay.
You too.
Okay. All right. And we're going on to the next caller. His name is Ron, and he's from area code 714. Ron, you're on the air. What can I help you with tonight?
Hello, Dave. Glad to hear that you're in good health. My question is, what about those of us who have our Vietnamese dong stashed under our mattresses and waiting for the next step? Is there anything we can do, such as open another bank account strictly for this, and anything else we could do to get prepared? Because I wouldn't know what to do with this stuff until I hear you tell us.
Well, let me tell you what I would do if I had a lot of dong stuck underneath my mattress. I would take it to the bank and I'd get my US dollars back, because you can buy dong at any time and you can get it on a 2-day notice. So it's like having all this money just sitting there and it's not working for you. Now, you do what you want to do. Everything I'm being told is that there will be a round 2 for the dong, but round 2 isn't going to be paid until round 1 is done, and then you're going to get at least a 1 or 2 month notice in advance before we're going to start basically taking in more dong for round 2. And again, I'll make sure that I have a legitimate buyer before I do anything on that. But if you've got currencies just sitting, especially dong, I would take it back to the bank and get your money back. You know, I mean, you do what you're. I mean, I don't know. See, I don't know your financial situation. Some people are still they have their finances are good enough that that's not a problem, and they're okay with it sitting there. Okay, because if you put it into a savings account, you're not getting anything on it anyway, because the interest rates are less than 1% a year. So, but it's just, are you comfortable with that money just sitting there, or would you like to take it and put it to work? That's a decision that only you can make. So.
Well, Dave, that brings up another question.
Sure.
What I've got is $250 worth of dong. Now, is that going to really be worth anything for exchange, or shall I take it back to the bank, like you say, it's going to cost me $60 to reconvert, and then buy a lot more of it when the time comes?
Well, if it's only $250, I would just hold on to it. That's me.
All right, just
because
let it sit there
you're going
lump in my mattress.
You're going to lose money in the exchange.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming $250 isn't a big hit to you right now. It's not something that you need to have to pay your monthly bills. And so I would just hold on to it.
Oh, okay, I may very well be able to buy more as soon as you give us like that 1 or 2 month notice. I can maybe I can build this up. As it is now, then thank you. I'll just leave it sit where it is and wait for your information.
Yeah, you can see you can go on eBay and get it in 2 days. And you can go down to a bank, and if they don't have it, they can order it for you and have it in 2 to 3 days. And
well,
the
that's
banks,
what I did, but that's
and the
right.
banks have the best rate for buying it.
Oh, the banks do?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
right.
lots.
Hey, look, thank you very much for answering my question, and I'll listen for you next week.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. If there's anybody else that would like to call in, I don't see anybody else right there. Blanca, do you see anybody else? You turned yourself off. Let's bring you back on. Blanca, I brought you back on.
Oh, okay.
There you are. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see anybody else calling in. Do you see
No,
anybody?
I think you got the ones who raised their hands.
I do too. So I think we're probably ready to call it a night tonight, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. Well, folks, thank you for joining us on the program tonight. I'm going to start the little jingle there on the stuff that is going there. And then over on Facebook, I'm going to click end the live video. So thanks a lot, folks. We'll see you next week.